Hello. That's me. Wow. That's loud. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the session. Even it's before lunchtime. I hope you're still a bit fresh, still you had enough sugar. So it's only 1 hour now. And the session will focus on how to exchange management data on wildlife and invasive alien species. So I'm the moderator for the session. Quentin, who is sitting here, is the co-moderator, and we have online help from my colleague Jasmijn Hillaert. She will check the chat regularly and see whether there are questions. Thank you for the technical support by the Pensoft publishers and Vibe system teams. The session will be recorded. So I think you all heard this, but please, when you attend this session in person, please use the microphone. For virtual attendees, please ask questions using the chat feature. And for after this session, there's always the Slack channel, for which you use the hashtag Lightning Talk number 7. By participating to this conference, you agree to abide by the TDWG Code of Conduct. And in case of technical difficulties, thank you for your attention. For your patience. Just maybe quickly the concept of this session. We only have 2 talks, so we were planning to take like something between 10 and 15 minutes because there are only 2 talks, we take a little bit more freedom. So we were planning to answer questions after the 2 talks, unless there are really urgent questions for people wanting to switch rooms. There is like time left for one important question, but the idea is to have a really focused discussion about how to deal with management data afterwards. So with this, I would like to first introduce you to Johan Liljeblad, who will be focusing on the practical examples of cooperation and of visualizing species information, species identification, and invasive alien species.
Thank you. Actually, I decided to rename this presentation because we cut it in half, sort of to focus on the invasive species. So yeah, invasive alien species in Sweden, simply. So how have we in Sweden rigged the system to deal with reports of alien species in Sweden? Yeah. Just first a quick glance. We have an information model that we're trying to implement. So the fringe here is in Swedish, so don't pay too much attention to the detail here. But just that we have something we're trying to base this on, like some kind of standard. But so briefly, the system, we have a detection, and we use anyone in Sweden that can find an invasive alien species, and they can report that into our systems. And an alert goes to an expert that can then verify if this is correct or not. And if it's correct, there is a new alert message to subscribers who will deal with these invasive species. And then they will take management measures and finally report a status. What did they succeed or what did they do And actually, you can even then follow up, and we are planning on even giving feedback to the original reporters or observers. So in a bit more detail, so we have, you can say, two ways of reporting. One is a simplified system that the Swedish EPA commissioned us to do, where you don't need an account at our system. You can just go in and you can see what potential invasive species there are, and you can read about them and then just enter the minimal amount of information. You have to give an email address and a name, but of course you can fake that. So it's pretty much anonymous, and that goes into the system without being shown publicly. And then we have the sort of our regular reporting system where you have an account, and that is a regular report of a species. But because it is invasive, there is an alert to the experts. But if it's an anonymous report, the experts will, if they verify that, they will be the reporter of the actual find, and they will decide that the species identification is correct. So the original observer will never be shown them. And that could be important if you're reporting your neighbor's giant hogweed or something. So whereas the published reports, they will just be verified. And if they're okay, there's the sent to the sort of those taking the action. What we added into this system is the possibility to verify not only the species identification, but also the place or location. Because if local authorities are taking action, management, it could be pretty costly, and you don't want to go to the wrong place doing that. So you want to be sure that this species is not only correct species, but is in this particular place the observer says it is. So this could be then a verified report with a place and some information, and you have images you can scrutinize. And then we have 21 county administrative boards in Sweden. So they each get to be authorized to verify regional reports. So both the species identification and the place, which is usually where what they are best on, the local places. Whereas for some of the species identifications, they need to ask the national experts. So, and this is mostly in Swedish here, so you don't need to read all that. But you can filter these observations on place or what kind of taxon is. And then there is also, we have actually a catalog of measurements you could take. So you can filter that on taxon, and you can get different kinds of, choose what species you have and what purpose and what would that cost and so on. So it's pretty, all the steps are in there, you could say. And then when a measurement is taken, that is entered into the system that we did try to eradicate this or remove, or, I mean, if it's an animal, you can be pretty sure it was exterminated. And this is where we're trying to get this to feed back to the original observer, but it's pretty technically difficult, actually. And then you can go back the year after and see if it's recovered. You can find this species or not recovered. So you can report not recovered even as an active report. And then we have some future ideas about getting statistics from these systems. So you can see how many reports actually lead to some kind of measurement being taken. And of course, we have to report to the EU, so that would be good to get that automated without having to manually go through data. Okay, and back to, just showing the information model more detail, where we pick out certain parts for the invasive alien species. And so we have our own categories for verification category, like if it's verified based on certain images and so I think that is pretty much the system summarized. And I think that is what I need to present right now. There is some more information, but that could be wait for discussion, I think.
So I'm not sure if there are any urgent questions at this point.
Are you considering invasive species only, or do you aim at including all alien species? And that's from Carlos Martinez.
Well, in the regular reporting systems, anything can be reported, of course, but we only have verification for the invasive alien species. I mean, to pay these people because of funding for those. But essentially anything could be verified. And we have currently, apart from the EU list, we have a national risk assessment list that is about to be implemented. Because I mean, we could save money by spending money there, I guess.
Out of my personal curiosity, are cats considered invasive species in Sweden?
Not on this list, I think, no. Okay. Maybe they should, but it's also about, I guess, being practical and
we have another question from Sander Peters. Nice work. Do you publish any of this ecological or distribution trait data on invasive species to GBIF, and what are the best practices in doing so?
Well, all published observations are reported to GBIF, but no other information, I think, currently, other than the underlying checklist, I mean, taxonomy backbone. I could add that we have a few other like campaigns where you don't have to have an account for, which are other way around, species that are worth you want to protect and you want to find out where they are, how many, what's the status of the hedgehog, for example. So you have a question there?
Yeah.
Or a comment?
Yeah, it's rather a comment. I'm a colleague of Johan. And as for the question, all the information on the ecological traits, etc., is produced digitally in artfactor.se, so it's searchable, etc. And it's a part of a bigger project in Sweden presenting information according to the information model on all 60,000 species in 100 years. So everything could be found there. And as Johan said, the observation data is going as a whole to the GBIF.
Yes, okay, thank you. So that brings me to my presentation about manIAS. It's a community-driven data model and data exchange format for the management of invasive alien species and wildlife. So I'm quickly going to talk about the need for a data exchange format. Then I'm going to focus on the focus in our project, the Live Riparias project. Then I'm going to talk about what is now so special about management data, and I will end with a way forward for our model. So very quickly, I suppose most people know about invasive alien species, but they cause serious negative environmental consequences. And each country has to report to the European Union, to the European Commission, with priority focus on the prevention of invasive alien species, early warning and rapid response, and management. For this, we need data. But in Belgium, there's a complexity, and I think it's a global complexity, that there are lots of organizations involved in the management of invasive alien species. So in Belgium, you have you have a lot of organizations gathering data. And that brings along a large diversity in the data format, taxonomic and geographic scope, the management registration methods, the objective, etc. So a large diversity to deal with. And this makes it very complex to have an overall view of the state of the art of invasive alien species, and especially to report back to the European Commission. So many managers have their own management registration system, data structure, reporting methods, and also important to mention is that they all have their own system, and that the choice for the system is made at the organizational level. So next to that, and as a result of that, actually not next to that, the Live Riparias project got started. So the Live Riparias project, which is a live project, of course, Belgian authorities want to pool their resources together to optimize the management of invasive alien species across ponds and river areas. And one of the goals is to improve these data flows between the organizations into one central registration system. So at this point, we are actually focusing and working to develop a system to report on the management actions and effectiveness. For this, we need a data exchange format. I think this is the first meeting where I don't have to explain what a data exchange format is. So I think the main question here is, why not use Darwin Core to exchange data between organizations and to publish the data to GBIF? Well, in its core, I think, management data contains information indeed about a location. A manager goes somewhere at a specific time, he sees a species, and the manager quantifies it. So you would think this is an occurrence score with related information. This can be published to GBIF, but there's a complexity to this because field managers actually do something in the field. So they go to the field, they remove the roots of a plant, they catch an animal, they shoot an animal. So these are the actions. And then a certain time later, a field manager returns to the field and he or she evaluates whether the action they undertook was effective. So this information related to management actions is currently not in the current format of Darwin Core. We didn't see any place to put this information. So related to management data, you have data with respect to the type of action. So is it physical, is it biological, is it chemical, and information related to the subtype. So did they use machines? Did they use a biocide? So all this information at this point, we didn't find any good place to publish it using Darwin Core. Also a description, what happened exactly. They removed giant hogweed in a nature reserve. So this is, for us, it was an extra complexity. In addition to that, related to a management action, there's information about the materials that is used. Did they use a crane, a gun to shoot an individual? What was the model, the serial number, the brands? Was it defect or not? So this was related to the status. So again, things we didn't really know where to publish it using Darwin Core. And then these are the evaluations. I don't know why this line is in yellow. It's just the same as the other lines anyway. Evaluations are more like observations, so occurrences. So in this way, you would say, okay, we can publish it using the occurrence score. But here, for instance, in this example, there is information about the evaluations. So Ghent is full of giant hogweed. That's kind of a general remark. But for instance, a manager can say, okay, all hogweed was removed successfully. Having this information, we recognized that there's a need for a data exchange format. And we started the process. We organized multiple workshops, bringing all the data managers or the field managers together, and to recognize the importance, which variables are necessary, which ones are optional. So here you just see a screenshot of information related to the individuals caught or captured in the management actions. So, for instance, yeah, the quantity of individuals was considered to be essential, while the sex and the size was considered to be optional. Additionally, we try to gather as much as use cases as possible to see whether or not the model still holds when a new use case was provided to us. This was also, so we integrated this information in a second workshop. This is quite a boring slide, but I think it's the most important slide of this whole meeting. This is the model that we have at this point. So I'm just looking for the pointer. Okay. So there are several tables here. So there's an information table about the locations, the taxa, media related to the management action or evaluation, people going into the field. So these are the information about the managers, to which organization you belong to. And here we have the actions and the evaluation table. So in this table, we really describe, okay, what actions were undertaken and a specific location for a specific species. And here in the evaluation table, this contains the information about the manager going back in the future, evaluating whether or not the management action was successful or not. And also related to the actions, you have the materials used for this action and the non-target impacts. So while managing a specific species, were there other species removed by accident? Were they harmed? How many species were they removed? This is what we have now. And all of this is described in our GitHub page. So you can find all information about the model there. The use cases are there. So anyone who wants more information about this model can just visit our GitHub page. And so we're still trying to look for use cases to improve the model, to see whether new use cases would just throw everything apart. We hope not, but it's just, this is the reason also why we are presenting this, to hear from people if they have use cases for us that could fit into the model to improve this. And then of course, the idea would be to we had use cases as a suggestion to improve the Grand Unified Model they are working on at this point. So in the end, we kind of hope that all this information can be put in the Grand Unified Model. But I hope to hear from you, and in the discussion that follows, like, okay, are there any things we can improve? Did we forget something? You just saw that very superficially, so I realize it's you might need more details. But with this presentation, I kind of hope to open the floor for questions. And of course, I would like to thank everyone working on this presentation and from the Live Riparias project. Thank you. Yeah, so please come forward.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Evelina Kallioniemi. I was just wondering, here you were focusing on the freshwater habitats. Is there some particular reason why that was the focus? And do you know do you have an idea how that would expand to the other habitat types? Is there something specific you need to take into account?
Yeah, so the reason why we focus on freshwater habitat is because it's just a focus on the Live Riparias project. So it has a specific geographical and taxonomic scope, but we look broader than that. So the idea is to integrate as much information as possible from the other systems as well. So in the title there was freshwater, and it should cover all information, but we look broader than that. So we integrated information about the management of gray squirrels, for instance. So at this point, that should cover use cases related to mammals. Well, not all mammals, but gray squirrels. We broaden our scope.
Okay, I don't see any questions online.
There was a question there.
Yeah.
So I noticed in your model the use of material as a class. I would strongly encourage you not to do that, simply because material sample type, and the work of iSamples, which is a global initiative, messing around with what materials are in the biggest scope. So I don't deny that what you're talking about is a material, but it's one of those term problems. I don't know whether it's best to settle on a, hey, let's look what they're doing and make sure what we think a material is what the larger forum thinks is a material. There's no good answer to this yet, I don't think. But otherwise, I would hide it as just call it something else, just to keep it.
I see Peter has a remark on that. So good. There's a microphone here, so for the people online. Okay.
Not entirely sure, but is the material you mean in the model equipment that was used?
Yes, the equipment.
Okay,
so
then equipment might be a better term for that.
Yeah. Yeah, another question?
Hey, I'm Michal Verma. I would like to ask if you considered using event core in Darwin Core Archive instead of occurrence, and then stuffing the data based on certain ontologies that you would define in either dynamic properties or something like that? Or
I'm not sure if that would work for the actions. So we have published the observations using event cores. We did that. So the observations is fine, but the actions, there were really specific fields related to the action. For instance, yeah, the mechanical movement. I'm not sure how that would fit. If you have any suggestions.
I was just thinking if you define ontologies instead of a new standard, just like, and then use the ontologies in dynamic properties, it might be, you know, easier, and maybe then think about the extension of the Darwin core as it is. Not.
Then I think it would be lumped in one field, or how do I see?
You can have as many fields as you want.
Mm.
Just
Yeah, I think also the goal at this point is also to make something that is workable for field managers. So for field managers, it's often Darwin core is outside of their comfort zone. So we also see this model a bit more like an intermediate step for them. So it's not only about how to squeeze it into Darwin core, it's also making it quite useful for people publishing or working with management data. But it's a good remark.
So Andrew Turley has a similar question online. Do you have any plans for any of these fields to be adopted into Darwin core, or do you think biosecurity fields need to be a separate standard?
We hope it will be integrated, especially John Jurek already made the exercise to integrate the information into the Grand Unified Model, and at this point it seems to work. So our idea is just to go with the flow and have all the information covered by the Grand Unified Model. That's the idea. Damiano?
Just to say that, Damiano Oldoni, the point is a question of timeline. Typically, projects are very timeline very strict, and the GBIF unified model, it's a quite long process probably. So the idea is we have to implement this next year. It has to be, should work before June next year. That's the idea why we started to think about kind of data exchange format between all organizations, how to read all information from all of these organizations and squeeze them together, kind of dashboard for visualizing, for making reporting. That's the idea why we are presenting this as a kind of separate unit and not, but of course we are really enjoy the work we're doing in GBIF for the Grand Unified Model, and we support that, of course.
I'm not sure if there are any questions online.
Just no more online. Just check Slack. No one else. So there were only 2 talks in this session. What we plan to do now is to have a bit more of an open discussion on this. We don't have a mic we can just move around, which is a big pity. I'm also aware there are lots of other talks going on in the other session. Oh, we do have a mobile mic. Okay, that's fantastic. So if people want to discuss this in depth with both Johan and Lien, please do stay here. We're very happy to have everyone who's still here. If you want to go to the other session and catch up on the other things, then that's all good too. And what I want to do now, and hopefully include the people online as well, is basically go amongst you, see what use cases you have, hand the mic around, and have a much more open discussion. So leave if you want to leave, stay if you want to stay, and please join. If you're staying, please join in and share your experience of invasive species management.
So I saw Peter also wants to say something.
Yeah, I have a general question. With the exercise that you have done, do you think it's going to be better to have a model or a format in which management data can be published, for example, to GBIF2, and the IPT is going to be able to adopt more than Darwin core, so you can have your own format and publish it to GBIF? Or do you think it is going to be possible to do some slight changes to Darwin Core and get the management data in there, and the route is more to have certain terms adopted in Darwin Core? Do you release it as this is a new format and we're adopting Darwin Core terms, or we're going to use Darwin Core archives and including some new Darwin Core terms? Am I explaining the two paths?
So
clearly?
what you mean is, are we expecting large changes or rather small changes to the existing standards?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, it's difficult to say. I think I would say at this point, I don't, well, next to the remark we had earlier, I don't see how small changes at this point can really cover it all. Also to cover the practical application of the model. So you could perhaps squeeze it into some fields, but for me, it's still important to have it's applicable for field managers, for people working in the field to understand what it is saying. So in this respect, I am more in favor of like developing something, well, rather large scale changes and to develop a new model that could also be integrated into the grand unified model in the end, but still you have something that people can really use. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, as for the Swedish example, I agree with what you've been saying here. We worked quite a lot with the different counter administrative boards, which do the actual management, having them to set and keep track of the information when it comes to, for example, how to get rid of these species and what methods and what do they need to have in their systems in order to work with the nature conservation part. And we did some comparisons when it comes to the information model as a whole to both Darwin Core and Plinian Core. And without having the details, I would say you can get it to work together without any very big changes. Then, of course, as soon as you come to the details, you always need to look at it specifically and see how to merge it together. But that's our analysis. And as you just said, it needs to work in practice and at the same time be a part of the whole process and of course, the standards that are.
No.
Just to take it sort of up a level. So let's look at the constituent parts of what we're talking about here. We're talking about extending a standard or a new standard. That part is slow, takes a community, and is definitely something we need to do. I completely agree. But that will not be here in time for you to implement it. So moving above the standards, you have a model. Your model relies on standards that exist, plus extensions of things that don't exist, that you hope will exist.
Yes.
Right? But the cool part of that is that that's the model that's underneath, and you will implement that in a database of some kind, and you will put a front end on that of some kind that is friendly to the people who you need to use it. They don't care about the standards, the data model, or any of that. They don't, maybe they do, but they don't need to, right? You're just simply saying, here's a nice form to capture this data in the way that we'd like to see it. And so I wouldn't be afraid of any part of that. It's just that each piece is moving at a different pace. And so I strongly encourage as the community, we talk about that standard piece, but I think you guys go ahead and prove that you can make the model work and that the people who use it are happy. Because if those people aren't happy or you realize the model needs work, then you're helping drive the pieces that need to get done.
Yeah, so I think now on the short term, we really want to see if we capture all information that is captured during field management. So this is what we are working on now, to see whether each new use case can be fit into the model. And I hope this work also can contribute to the refinement of the grand unified model in the end, because it will capture as much information as possible. So I think all the work we do now is just a matter of refinements to be used in the future. That's how I see it. Yep.
Yes, and I think a key point here is that the modeling could be done in several ways. And you can test that, hiding it from your users, because your users just see the implementation. You may want to play around, and you can. I think that's nice. Now, second part of my conversation. So I work for a government, the Canadian government, and we have a sister to, I work for agriculture. And we have a sister that regulates our invasives and our weed seeds and things like this. They're all regulated and legal entity, right? And all of that stuff is hidden. So there are observations everywhere on iNaturalist, et cetera, like all of our countries, right? All that stuff is out there. These people aren't paying attention to that, really. They're paying attention to what should be on the list and then enforcement. And that enforcement is more about industry and, you know, things coming in that we don't want, not so much things that are already here. There is a group that for us that also is supposed to be responsible for that, but they're not as active, let's say, on the enforcement side, or even the, you know, it sounds like some countries are much more active than others. But I wonder, the trouble is, how do we get the regulators to give us the valuable information that they hide in a way that we could use it? Because it does inform management. There is a lot of knowledge there, but the redaction problem is an issue. At least I find that. It's the trouble when I try to deal with them and say, well, I need this information to inform the system, and they don't want to give it to me. It's not really, I don't know what it's even a question.
Or you should come to my talk later on about cultivating domesticated organisms as well. There is a comment online from Yiming Gang, who says that I would like to learn how to bridge the gap between people working in the field, not familiar with Darwin Core, and all the ways ways to data publication, the challenges and the solutions, which is why I suggested the topic for an unconference, data management from field to data publication. I hope to document this and share it with the conference participants. It'd be great if this happens and you can be present.
So I think there was a question on how to motivate field workers to publish data.
Yes, I missed that one, didn't I? Yeah.
Okay. I don't see field workers publishing data to GBIF or using Darwin Core. I think that task is really for the people in their own organization managing the whole project. But at this point also, this is something very abstract for people working in these organizations. So at this point, this is the goal actually of the Live Riparias project. We are currently publishing the data from each organizations to GBIF. And in the long term, we want to make each organization kind of self-reliant. So what we do is we make an R code transforming their data to Darwin Core. We publish the data to GBIF in an automatic way. And in long term, we want to take off our hands and we hope that each organization can be self-reliant. So, but I don't think the field workers should be familiar with the Darwin Core. I think the people, the responsible managers in the organization, I hope should be aware of what Darwin Core is. Perhaps they don't need to do the data transforming using the R coding, and Damiano will give another talk about this on Thursday. So we have this early warning system, but I see a responsibility for the people, the project managers within the organizations and not the field workers. That's, if that answers the question.
So can I make a comment so I can jump in, because I've got the mic in my hand so I can. I think the main problem we're trying to resolve here is the fact that many people across the world are managing invasive species in all sorts of different ways, and sharing the information on that management and what's successful and unsuccessful is extremely poor, and for obvious reasons, because these people are working in very local environments, and we're trying to capture that without creating a big burden on those people, either on the data management as well. Europe, I mean, obviously Canada, you have 2 languages and you have different states and things like this, but that doesn't even compare with the number of different languages in Europe, the reporting requirements for nationalities and for Europe as a whole, and all the different kinds of invasive species and the different climatic zones and things like that. So I think that's the problem we're trying to resolve, and we're not going to resolve it overnight, but we need some way of exchanging data on that. I'll take Damiano, but I also want to hear from the people who live in that corner who stayed, so you have to contribute. So think about what your country situation is and what you can share with us about that.
Well, you just said what I wanted to say about the local environment and how difficult it is to convince these people to at least share this data.
And
Just sharing.
A question from this.
Hello, Guillaume Body from the French Agency of Biodiversity. So just to jump in the discussion, saying that in France, we are also working on that, just starting now to try to set up a database on management action on invasive species. So I will just transfer to my colleagues, but I think you know them. But for your models, I think that can fit in really well in the current Darwin core standard, and it's not that far from the field work. If you think at the event, it's just describing how you go to the field, and then you can have what you see in the occurrence and the measurement you can take using the measurement of fact extension, and the action part is maybe harder, but maybe just the measurement of fact extension can do the job pretty well. And for the material you are using, you may think about what OBIS has done, because they have a lot of materials for their observations. And I know that they extended the measurement of fact to be able to record the ID of the materials, etc. So maybe good things.
Yeah, I think if you want, you can squeeze the information in to say, but the thing is that it's not always as easy to read when you publish everything in the measurement or facts extension. Then you have a lot of fields. So yeah, I think at this point, next to whether or not we can publish it into Darwin Core, at this point, I think it's just really a matter for us of identifying what information is really essential, and does it align with the work people do in the field? I think maybe that's even more important question at this point, but yeah.
I was just wondering if the measurement, the action would be an event type, maybe in the new model of having events rather than a inventory. This could be a.
I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues. How I see it is that you have one event is one management action, well, a combination of the management actions and evaluations occurring at a specific place on a specific species or a group of species. So one event would group actions and evaluations, because a field manager always goes back to the spots. He or she always takes an action or does an evaluation. So these are all combined as a single event. So in that perspective, it's I think, yeah, that is an event. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think an event core might work. I think measurement of fact you'd still have to make sure that everyone uses measurement and fact in the same way, and that's part of the problem. So you still need to define some vocabularies to use within measurement or fact, and that's what you're trying to get at, isn't it? Really, what are those vocabularies? What are those? The measurement of fact can kind of fit anything in a way, but if people are using it in different ways, you can't. It's not machine readable, and then so
yeah.
I think what's very important if you want to make every part of the society to be involved, both in the management part and in the reporting part, etc., is to see the needs for every user. And as Johan mentioned, for example, when it comes to reporting, the normal reporting system in Sweden is for the one knowing the species, but for the invasive alien species, by doing it very much easier and not having as a demand to even know the species determination accuracy, you can have, along with the government and organizations advertising this, very many people reporting, and then you need to have a system validation to take care of the reports and the accuracy, and then to see the needs for the one doing the management. If you get the whole team and everyone working for the same goal, I think that's the one of the keys to success.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the key, but it's also the largest difficulty we experience. So dealing with this large diversity of factors involved. So yeah, definitely.
I remember when I was a student, we had to make timesheets up, and not when I was actually a student, when I was in a holiday job with the Department of Agriculture, and we used to go out in the field and test things and harvest things, all very mundane things for a student to do. But when it came to the timesheets, we used to find the most exotic boxes to tick for our timesheets, because nobody ever seemed to know what these numbers meant. And we just ticked anything we wanted to, and nobody ever came back to us and said, well, why were you doing milking when you were actually out in the field harvesting corn or something like that? So you have to make these standards for people who work in the field, make them feel that they're valuable and that they're doing something important, and that they want to record this stuff and make it useful. And Yiming Gang also says thank you, Lin, and is also, again, encouraging us to come to the unconference and hoping that's chosen for the unconference topic. I'm just paraphrasing a bit more here. Yes, because they really want to know how they can not enforce standards on people working in the field, but still have the data standardized.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And also we are currently working on a tool for people to register observations and actions, management actions in the field. And we also encountered this difficulty for it. If you want field workers to use the application, it must be really simple and a really simple interface. So it's the same with the standard. If you are working with people in the fields, you must really think of how you can simplify things as much as possible.
Yeah, maybe slightly out of this question, the discussion, but I just remembered that there's this, I don't know how many people are aware of conservationevidence.com, but I'm thinking that might be a nice way of kind of the next step, if we can summarize those findings from these studies and make it available, that then the next people doing management actions know what worked and what didn't work. So thinking the flow of data even further.
Okay. Yeah.
So that sort of jumped ahead where I was going to go. And I was going to say, we're always trying to keep things simple and it's not like reinventing, but not thinking we're too special, right? So when I think of this, you're talking about management practices. There's management practices in a lot of things, like conservation. right? So this is really no different. You're trying to remove something, they're trying to keep something. But the point here is that the model's the same, like, the standards, that if we can work together as that broader community, then we have more friends, potentially more money and more people thinking about it. And that might move us closer to the kinds of the ways to standardize these things. But
Yes.
I also completely agree that a lot of this is about the vocabularies more than, I think we have places we can put things, but we have to understand what we want people to know. When it comes to the people in the field, right? I don't know, I don't want to be mean, but these people have a job. Their job comes with whatever, app is on their tablet to fill in whatever field you tell them. So they're very disconnected from the data itself. And they probably don't have strong feelings about it because it's their job and this is what they were told to do. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. What's important is that it's the middle piece of when it leaves that tablet, goes into some database somewhere, how does it get out to be useful to everyone else?
Yeah. And that's also why we included wildlife in the title. So not only invasive alien species, but I think the main point here is how to report on these actions occurring into the field, whether it's indeed protecting a species or removing a species, or you're completely right. Yeah,
I think you summed it up earlier when you said it's important to work out what's essential. So get your essential stuff, because systems are available now. You can have 2 or 3 remarks fields where you can pull this other information in. We have systems now that searches that very well. So you can find that information.
Yeah.
There's the essential data that you want, the core data, which we talk a lot about, the core data that you want to exchange. The other is peripheral and can be handled in different ways. There's that core data that you want to make sure that you've got the essential information about.
Yeah, so one of the things always returning into discussions is, for instance, the cost of a management action, the time spent in the field. These are things that I, before we started this, would never take into account, but this was also considered to be an essential thing to report on, the hours a person spent in the field, the costs related to that. So we're still kind of struggling how to deal with this information. So yeah.
See Arthur, there I was just thinking, Australia and New Zealand probably have national solutions for doing exactly this, home country built things, and be kind of, sorry? There you go. So it'd be very interesting to compare all of these national solutions with what you have already. And, Australia and New Zealand are definitely way ahead of many countries on this kind of thing too. I don't know how much they're sharing with other countries on management. Yes. Any other comments from people?
Yes, so I think we're also close to the end of the session, so maybe
if there was anyone online who wants to have a word, we can let you open your mic and you can talk as well too. You might just have to speak up because I may not see you. They all disappeared.
People are
Can
hungry.
you hear me?
No.
Oh, is there someone there?
Yes.
Yep. Just Andrew here. I was just going to, I'm part of the Atlas of Living Australia in Australia, and I've been talking a lot to the Department of Agriculture here, who run the biosecurity, plant, animal, human health and environment, and data standards, although there are conventions, but there's not actually standards within the system as a whole. There has just been essentially a data model adopted for surveillance at one of the high-level plant health committees, which involves all the state, territories and the Commonwealth governments that have just agreed. That's only one arm of biosecurity in Australia. So it's probably, given the scale of biosecurity in Australia, it's not as advanced as I think we would normally expect. And I think a lot of that is reflected in that a lot of the biosecurity systems are not connected, and data isn't openly shared between different levels of government. So there hasn't been that desire and will to get a standard together to share and aggregate the data.
So these managed on a state level rather than a federal level in Australia?
So it's at the Commonwealth level, so the national level, they manage basically any pests coming in at the border, so our ports, airports, things like that. If a pest gets past that border, then it goes to the states by default. They then make an assessment as whether a pest or a weed is eradicable. And there's a number of deeds around funding and industry contributions if it is eradicable, and they try and eradicate it. If they then determine that it is not eradicable, the responsibility for managing established pests goes to the council government, the lowest level of government that we actually have in Australia. So creates a complexity for aggregating data because it's at all levels of government and lots of players in there, as well as then you've got industry doing their own surveillance independent of government for plant pests and things like that too. So.
One of my claims to fame is I've actually discovered a whole new weed to Australia, so, which was only in one site, but they later determined wasn't eradicable. So now I know what happened. Perhaps we should finish there.
Yeah, so I think it's time for lunch. So I want to thank everyone for attending the sessions, for your inputs. If there are any use cases you want to share with me or other thoughts, you can find me the whole conference and my colleagues. We're here the whole time. And of course, there's this Slack channel for more discussion, but thank you, and thank Quentin for helping me out here with the discussion. Okay, enjoy your lunch.